You're listening to an AINC original podcast. We believe you don't have to do life without a compass. Let us be your guide on this amazing journey. Welcome to Navigating Life with Vision Loss.
Hello, I'm Kim Wardlow. I'm your host for the Navigating Life with Vision Loss podcast. I'm excited to be with you today, continuing to talk about travel. We've just had such a fun month talking about travel and cruising and navigating through airports and what you might expect in other countries in terms of accessibility and things like that. So it's been a fun month so far. And today we're talking with Ted Tahquechi about domestic and land travel. I think that will be super exciting and informative with all of the adventures that he and his guide dog Fauna have had. But before we start, I just want to remind you that if you have questions or comments, you can contact us via phone or email. Our phone number is 720-712-8856. 720-712-8856, or our email is feedback@aftersight.org. So please feel free to contact us. But I want to welcome Ted Tahquechi. He's a blind photographer, a travel influencer, a disability advocate, and a photo educator. He's done so many things. He started his career with Vision, working in the video game industry for Atari, Accolade, Mattel Toys, managing development of over 30 entertainment titles for them. A car accident left him with no vision in one eye and 5% low functioning vision in the other. So that had him rethinking about what he was doing. And since that accident, he's returned to school and completed degrees in photography and art, and really now has spent his career both in art and travel, looking at the accessibility of both and trying to see how that can be improved. His website is blindtravels.com, and that is a great source of information, educational videos, reviews of different hotels and locations, and it really leverages on his over 35 years of business and leisure travel. So there's so much to that website, but let's start talking to Ted. Ted, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to speak with you. I know you traveled, obviously, in your career prior to becoming a travel influencer when you were working in the video game industry. Was that the catalyst that kind of got you going once you lost vision to continue to focus on travel?
I would definitely say that was a huge part of it. And for me, I worked primarily with external developers, so people that were working on the games that were, not located at the places, that we worked at, like Atari, or that I worked at, like Atari, Mattel, and Accolade. And I would actually just, be traveling, to Europe and not too much in the US, but just kind of all over Europe to these different places that were making the games. And, that it was like 3 weeks out of a month that I was gone from home. So, my wife, she raised our twin boys, so she's the super mom. And, it just really was the thing that got me into that. And I think that when I had the travel, or when I had the car accident, I really wanted to continue to travel. And so I kind of had this like mental database of things that I had made notes of, about like where the pools were located and stuff like that, kind of over the time after the car accident for the hotels that we had gone to. And that kind of large database, became Blind Travels, and it's kind of what it started. I started it, as a very selfish thing for me to just be an online database so that I could know where things were. And then it kind of morphed out of that and really has become something else altogether, which is great.
Well, and having that experience with travel, I can see where you'd want to continue with travel. So often people think, oh, I've lost vision. I can't travel anymore. I won't enjoy travel anymore. But obviously, you've continued to travel extensively, and people can benefit from that knowledge because you've actually worked with different hotels and airlines and things to be able to create some bodies of work. We'll talk about a little bit later with photography, but also with your website and your blogs.
I think that one of the things that is really important, and I think the reason that I've been able to work with some of the awesome brands that I've been able to work with, is because a lot of hotels and service providers are just not really super prepared for guests or, travelers that are visually impaired, either with a little bit of vision or none at all. And I think that just a lot of people just don't know how to deal with it, because, people who have mobility aids, wheelchairs, they're usually pretty, accessible, in most of the places they go. But, vision being kind of a, harder to detect unless you have a guide dog or a cane. Vision loss is such a huge spectrum. And, it's really important for people to, that are in the hospitality industry to understand that. Because there's some people that just can't see, the elevator numbers or the numbers to their room. And then there's other people that just could really use help and understanding kind of the lay of the land of the property when they get there.
Well, and educating the individuals in the hospitality industry is so important. I appreciate that you're doing that because that helps them know how to offer help in an appropriate way, in a respectful way, so people know that they're willing to help, but they're not sort of forcing help that might not be needed.
Yeah. And I think kind of walking that line is pretty much true for anything, especially in the travel and hospitality industries. I mean, you go to an airport and sometimes you just have the guy that grabs you and throws you in the wheelchair and you go roll into the gate. And other times they're just like not really sure how to help. And they're kind of like, wondering how it is to deal with you. And a lot of times, taking the time to really talk with them and help them understand that not everybody is exactly the same, and that some people like to just jump in the wheelchair and be pushed, and others love to walk. I love to walk through the airport. My guide loves to wander around the airport, and it's just one of those things that they just need to get more experience with people who are blind and vision impaired.
Well, we're here in a beautiful state in Colorado, and there's lots of things to see, lots of places to go. If somebody is wanting really to start basic, travel, and they've lost vision, or maybe they're young and they're just starting to travel on their own. They've been blind maybe their whole life, but they're just starting to do things more on their own. What guidance would you give them? Where would you suggest they go, or where to start if they're starting here? Well, we can use Colorado as an example because it's so great, but wherever they might be, how they would start out.
It's just so amazing to live here because there's so many different things you can do. You want to be up in the mountains, you can be there in 25 minutes or whatever. You want to be down in the desert, and it's just great. It just takes you a couple hours to get there. One of the things that I love to suggest that people try is the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railway. And that leaves out of Antonito, Colorado. And it's about a 3-ish hour drive from downtown Denver to Antonito. And you get on the train there, and my choice is always to do the round trip. But you jump on in the morning, and you kind of cruise through the mountains, and they stop and give you lunch. And then after a little while, you get to Chama, New Mexico. And you get to get off and check out New Mexico a little bit. If you've never been to New Mexico, it's always fun. You don't really have a lot of time, but it's fun. But it's one of those old, cool steam engines. And it's a really accessible kind of thing. I always bring a sighted guide with me so that they can explain, what I'm seeing and that kind of stuff. Because unfortunately, at this point, the railway doesn't offer, sighted or guided audio descriptions or anything like that, which I would, I've been pushing. I've talked with them, emailed them a bunch of times, and it's just one of those things. It's because I think that tours as a whole, whenever you go to a city or something like that, are another one of those things that people don't really understand how to deal with people who are vision impaired. And I've worked with a whole bunch of different tour companies in different countries and different states, so that when you jump on that they're more verbose, and rather than just saying, kind of pointing to an area, which, we all love, and just saying over here, you see blah, and saying, and just helping them to understand that a more verbose description of whatever it is that they're talking about is super helpful for people who can't see it. But anyway, back to the railway before I get too completely derailed there. No pun intended. The accommodations in Antonito are really reasonably priced, so you can grab everything from Holiday Inn on down, and a little bit more up, just depending on what you want to pay. And then we always get there the day before and jump on the train in the morning because it leaves early, and you don't want to get up at like 4 a.m. and drive from Denver all the way there. No. But it's a great train ride, and it's a lot of fun. And I have really sensitive hearing, and I don't find the steam engine like overly offensive or overly crazy. But if you go, it runs from like May till October, and if you go, sometime during the summer, it's just gorgeous. Or even in the fall, my wife loves to go and do the fall leaves. So she likes to check out all those, and so that's always fun. And again, the weather's just gorgeous around that time.
So that's a great way to get out and get a description of some scenery. If you're not maybe quite up for hiking through the mountains or things like that. But I know people love to do that too. So,
well, I mean, there's other options too. I mean, if you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit more adventurous or because it's the railway is pretty easy. But if you want to do something, I mean, we've got a million different food festivals and drink festivals here in Colorado, and those are definitely a little bit more adventurous as far as like dealing with a lot of people and, people that are going to be bouncing you around and stuff like that while you're trying to walk with your cane and stuff or your guide dog. But those are fairly easy things. And a lot of times that they'll have, hotels that are right on or very close to where the festivals are going to be. Like I'm thinking of like the Whiskey and Bacon Festival that's up in Keystone. It's a favorite of mine. It's in June. It's actually on my birthday this year, which is really cool. Oh. And you go up to Keystone and you kind of come out of your room and you go down an elevator. It's super easy. Pop right out in the festival and you can have, whiskey and bacon. So, I mean, that's exactly what I needed. And they also have, a whole bunch of different other things that you can do there too. And there's shopping and everything like that. So, I mean, those are really, really good options. Where I love to go, because we're in Colorado, is Rocky Mountain National Park. But, my gosh, it's just not really accessible. But there's a lot of places that you can go that you can get to right off of the road, though, and of course, it should be mentioned that as we're coming close to summertime, that they do have timed entry. So you'll have to go onto the Rocky Mountain National Park website and, schedule a time for your car to come in and when you're going to come in, we're going to come out and all that sort of stuff. Costs you a couple of bucks, but you get a timed entry, and that's kind of cool. And there's all kinds of different really cool stuff that the rangers do during the year, especially during the summer months and late spring, all kinds of different nature programs and stuff like that. Very accessible walks that they do. And they're usually very verbose about descriptions about the things that they're seeing and the things that they're pointing out to the people that are on those walks. So highly recommend those. It's kind of like a, really, really great, really, really bad kind of thing. Some of the options that are there are great, but the accessibility is kind of scary sometimes because you can walk off of a trail. So you got to make sure that you got either your guide or sighted guide. It can be a lot of fun.
And just in terms of getting there, do you have recommendations for folks? Obviously, if you're going with a sighted guide, they may be driving you. That they would be driving you. But if you're trying to do an adventure, maybe you're getting on a train in Denver or a bus or something like that, of other types of ways to travel by land if you're trying to get between a couple points. If
I remember correctly, I haven't done it myself because I always just drag a poor sighted guide with me, but if I remember correctly, Amtrak has an option, I believe, to get up to someplace close. If I remember, I think that you can get up to Estes Park, if I remember right. But yeah, again, that's just one of those things, one of those places I really love to go. Not super accessible, especially with transportation and public transportation for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a lot of times you'll have to factor that in if you're not flying and having the airport experience of how you're going to get get to that place that you want to see. What are suggestions as people traveling domestically that they might take for granted? I think we think about, I'm going out of the country. I need to, do this research and know these things about where I'm going. And we don't always think about that if we're just traveling domestically.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is that you just never take for granted that there's a room available. And if you're wherever you're going, do the research and look at Google Earth and as much as you can as far as figuring out where things are that are around you. But, book your room early, wherever it is that you're going, especially if you're going someplace that's got an event, then my goodness, it can be so painful to not get a room that's close to whatever it is that you're going to go and do or go and see. So I always, one of the first things I'll actually book my room a lot of times first, and then do flights after that. Because I'd rather just wait around for a room to be available because I got in early on a flight than not have a room that,
right.
that's not a good location. So, the other thing too, especially for domestic travel is, I think a lot of people take for granted that credit cards, and I'm not going to mention any names or any companies or whatever, but there's always credit cards that offer travel bonuses and travel miles and that sort of stuff. We often use our credit cards for airlines, or for cruises and that sort of stuff. And that's one of those things that you're going to spend the money anyway on whatever it is. You might as well get some points back. So that's just one of those things that we always recommend. Right.
That's a good tip. Well, you've kind of combined your love of travel and your photography in the Fauna's Adventures series.
Yep.
I don't know if that's still ongoing or if that's, a finite body of work, but traveling with Fauna, your guide dog, and all of her adventures with you.
Yeah, she absolutely loves to travel. I got her in 2018, and she was my first guide dog. I was one of those people that was super stubborn and always said that somebody else needs the guide dog more than me. So I waited for a very long time until the family basically had an intervention, sat me down and said, "Okay, Dad, it's time to do this. We're tired of you running into everything and going off the rails and hurting yourself, et cetera, et cetera." So they kind of forced the issue very lovingly to get a guide dog. And boy, she's been life-changing for me, just being able to get into and out of a restaurant, being able to, go from point A to point B with myself, by myself, solo travel and all that sort of stuff. When I'm speaking at travel conferences or something like that, it's just amazing. It's just I cannot overemphasize how much companies like Guide Dogs for the Blind give to their clients. And that's one of the things that I always do with my photography is I don't sell my photography. I only donate to different auctions and that sort of stuff that will raise money for Guide Dogs for the Blind or other, vision related type organizations like Heather's Camp that's out of Wichita, Kansas, that offers summer camp experiences for kids who are blind and vision impaired. And they're just an amazing organization. So, and as far as the Fauna's Travels Fauna's Travels body of work, that is never really concluded. I mean, as far as we go somewhere, we definitely expand on it. It's been shown quite a few times. It's really a lot of fun to show to people that have questions about guide dogs, because there's always these people who wonder what the actual role is of a guide dog, how a guide dog helps, and you get the things that are questionable. How does who picks up the poop for a guide dog and all that, those silly things. But once you field those questions and move on to things that are a little bit more mature, then there's always a lot of really good feedback and a lot of really good conversations around the roles that guide dogs play in society.
Well, and she's also featured in some of your educational videos as well on your website, blindtravels.com. Do you want to talk about, would you talk about a little bit about what's on your website? You have blogs, you have educational videos, reviews, all kinds of information there.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of took a double-pronged approach. I mean, the main focus of the website is to be a resource for people who want to travel, whether they're solo or with a sighted guide, and want to do the research for the location that they're headed to. So if you're, for every place that I go, I always talk about when you enter a hotel property, where the check-in desk is, where the amenities are, where the pool is, where the restaurant is, all of those things, kind of where the elevators are from the check-in desk. So that if I always kind of make these notes and put the reviews in a way that if I was there by myself, that I could easily just kind of refer to them and find my way around wherever it is. And I always, I kind of have a pet peeve about like the shower gels and the shampoos, that they're always poorly marked. So a lot of times I'll drag the poor people from the front desk and say, okay, could you just tell me which one is which? And we're good, cause I can see blurs and I can see light and that sort of stuff, but I can't read, and I don't always want to use the text to AI type stuff. So, a lot of times it helps them understand what's missing and what's important for somebody who can't see when they come into their establishment, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think the website is helpful for individuals that are blind or have vision loss, as well as a person that might be accompanying somebody and be that sighted guide that's going with them to
and people who are in the hospitality industry as well, and one of the big things that when I started the website was, can you just answer some questions, and kind of I'd make those notes, and so then it became a series on there, and just trying to make notes that will allow people who are blind and visually impaired to have a better travel experience, and once you have that information, or once people have information about how to help you better, it just makes things kind of paying it forward, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Any other tips you have for traveling that you want to share with people? Definitely, we recommend folks going to your website because there's so much there, and resources and all kinds of things. And it is a great place for somebody who's just starting out traveling after they've lost vision, because you do have all of the information spelled out there. Until they get
one
a
of those
little more
things
adventurous.
that's always one of the articles on there that has really done very well from a traction standpoint is the information about Amtrak. And it's one of those things, trains are just a lot of fun to just hang out on. And I wrote a huge article a couple of years ago about traveling from Denver to California, and it's a 33-hour ride. And you think, oh, well, you're going to go through these scenic places, and if you can't see it, it's not a big deal. I did it solo. I had a great time, and the people that were on the train, were very accommodating, especially for the guide dog. The guy in my car had never dealt with any service animal except for the biting little chihuahuas that people say are a service animal and wear the little vests from the internet. And so, his experience was very poor, and, he was scared of dogs and all that. And when we got off the train in Emeryville, he, said, here's your stop. Can I help you off the train? And he said, can I talk to you for a moment? And I'm like, yeah. He's all, can I give your dog a hug? She's like the most amazing thing. So nice. And like, yeah, she's all about changing perceptions about what guide dogs can do. And she wants to be the ambassador for good girls everywhere.
Right. Well, and that's another thing that you're doing through your site and through your travels is advocating for guide dogs and legitimate service animals, not people just trying to put a vest on their dog saying that, a pet that's not truly a service animal. And that, I think that is so important because that really impacts people who are traveling with those legitimate service animals and getting pushback.
I think it impacts people on both sides. I think it definitely makes things easier for people who are using legitimate service animals like guide dogs, but it also really changes perceptions for people that are in the hospitality industry about what a real service animal that actually has had training can do, and as a matter of fact, I was just speaking recently at a retro gamer conference and about my time in the games industry. And, we went up on stage, and first thing Fauna did was flop in front of me and kind of curl up and take a nap. And there was, 1,000 people in the audience. And afterwards, they were doing questions. And one of them said, all she did was just sleep. How can she be so awesome? And I said, she's heard all this stuff before. She doesn't want to hear it, So it's one of those things that, people are always amazed by how awesome, really well-trained and really legitimate service animals are. And that really does change perceptions, like whether it's Amtrak or whether it's a hotel, person that's checking you in and experiencing a real guide dog for the first time. And, you kind of help them understand that it's not okay to interact with the guide dog and not pet with them or not pet them because they can walk you into a wall because you're distracting them and they get excited and happy like my Fauna does,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you're also doing some other unique and interesting things. You've started a partnership with the Andy Warhol Foundation for Visual Art and Redline Contemporary Art Center of Denver.
Yep.
And I know that involves photography other than your photography with Fauna.
It does. And so that body of work, it's called Landscapes of the Body. And I'll send you links to everything that I'm blah-blahing about during the thing here. But it's at bodyscapes.photography and it's an accessible site. But basically what it is it's a black and white abstract view of the human form. And that whole body of work came out of my fear of working with people. When I went to school and got my degree in photography. And I mean, if there's one thing that I learned going back to school and going into visual arts is that entire world is woefully unprepared for people who can't see, and going through art history and trying to tell the difference between like all the different Gothic columns and, whether something was, from this period or that period, you end up having to, navigate a world that is just focused on vision and has never even considered audio descriptions of what you're seeing, even an option, And so that was definitely, kind of trudging new ground. But anyway, this body of work, it basically, because I can't see people's faces when I'm working with them, I started shooting people's hands. And that kind of became a thing for me. I was shooting people's hands when they were working and playing and praying and all these different things. And it just evolved. And it evolved into just being different body parts. And then I was shooting arms and legs and all that kind of stuff. And then it became like the full body. And it was really cool to be able to work with people because they're super comfortable working with you if you can't really see their body. They're like, we can see the outline of the body, but I'm comfortable being naked in front of you because you can't really see me,
Right.
So it became about more about looking at the form, the shape, and the lighting that was on the body and kind of making these cool abstract kind of landscape-esque pictures out of it. And that was always intended to just be a personal body of work. It was just something that I kind of got over my fear of working with people, again, because I couldn't see bodies or couldn't see faces. And then my wife, Carrie, and we were in the Santa Fe Art District maybe it was about 2 or 3 months after we moved here in Denver in 2015. And we were, hanging out and we were talking to different peoples and looking at galleries. And like we always do, we were looking at art and we were standing there and my wife was behind me and I was saying, okay, I can see these colors and these shapes. And then she kind of fills in the details. And just so happened that the curator of a wonderful place called Access Gallery was standing behind us, and we got to talking. And suddenly, I had an interview with him the next day, and then suddenly I had a show. And Landscapes of the Body made its debut for the month of photography in Denver in 2019, and things have just been a roller coaster of awesomeness ever since. I just feel so blessed.
Oh, that's wonderful. Access Gallery is wonderful. They for folks that don't know, they do feature and promote the work of artists who have a variety of disabilities, not just a loss of vision, but it's definitely a fun place to check out on Santa Fe.
Yeah, and it just, after making its debut, we showed it kind of all over different places. It had a 3-year solo exhibition at the Lighthouse for the Blind Gallery in San Francisco, which was just totally amazing. It was during COVID. Like we came in at the beginning of COVID, and then it just ended up just staying after that, which was really great. And then it was maybe almost 10 years to the day from the time that I started shooting that body of work, when I got invited to and accepted for an awesome partnership with Redline Contemporary Art Center here in Denver and the Andy Warhol Foundation. And what we're doing with that body of work is we've created a way to make tactile prints using 3D printers. So we take the actual flat print, we run it through an absolute nightmare process from Photoshop that builds a texture map. And then once you do that, then we can send the whole thing to the 3D printer. And it's just so cool. It's so much fun. So yeah, that's going to be coming out, a lot more. We're actually going to be showing it at the Shine Music Festival, which is in August. I'm sure you're all familiar with that.
We are.
So we're going to be showing it there. And then I'll be also doing a talk about the importance of making visual art accessible for people who can't see it. We're also going to be showing the work here in Colorado at the NFB state convention. And we're scheduled to show it at the Florida convention, the NFB, the national convention. So those are the three that we have there. So, if you're here in Denver, please stop by. I'd love to talk with you and show you my work. We're going to have the tactile versions there. And the way that the work is going to be shown is the traditional prints, the large black and white prints. And then there will be a tactile print with it. And they're shown with a QR code that's also tactile that you can either scan or tap your phone on, because it's got an RFID chip in it that does an audio description of what you're seeing or what you're feeling on the tactile print. So it kind of guides you through that. So it's definitely kind of a new and innovative way to show things, but people are really liking it quite a bit.
Right. Well, and that's related to what you just announced on your blog. You have received a Flight for Sight travel grant.
Yep.
And again, to make travel and the visual aspects of travel more accessible.
Yeah. So my wife Carrie and I just announced last night that we're one of the 3 winners of the Flight for Sight grant. Such an amazing organization. And basically what it is it offers people who are blind or low vision an option to kind of have a social commentary and travel and, kind of work with social media to try to promote, bringing blindness and all its awesomeness and, the upsides and the downsides of it, and more into the light. And they're just such an amazing organization. It's flightforsight.net if you don't know. They just finished their round of grants for this year. And we'll be actually flying to several different locations here in the U.S. We have a couple of West Coast trips planned, and we have a couple of East Coast trips planned at the moment. But, one of those things that if you were born with no sight, or if you've always had low vision, then you may have heard about iconic places in the U.S., maybe in your history books or whatever, and always wanted to experience like the Golden Gate Bridge or Mount Rushmore or, something like this, the state capitol or whatever.
Right.
And you didn't really have the option to, unless somebody actually took the time to make a tactile painting, and build up so that you could actually feel it. It's not something that a lot of people have experienced. And that's what we want to try to bring forward. We want to make that an option for, showing an exhibition that is places that maybe you've heard of, like Statue of Liberty or whatever, or the New York skyline or whatever. And we would love to hear from, your audience, places that we could go, because we're going to be traveling through the summer and we're going to be building this awesome exhibition and gallery showing, culminating at the end of it at the end of the year. So if you all have suggestions about where to go or things that you've always wanted to check out, but you never had the opportunity, let us know. I'd love to hear it.
That would be great. So you'll be taking photos, you'll be creating those tactile renditions of the photos and what you're seeing.
Using the technology that we built using the Warhol information or the Warhol grant.
Oh, that's so exciting. So you may have some of those by the fall when you're at conventions and things like that. So that
we will. Yeah, I've actually got quite a few that I've already made here off of my old photos and that sort of stuff. So, but we'll be making a whole new body of work with Flight for Sight. So it's super exciting.
That is exciting. Well, Ted, thank you so much. I feel like there's so much to talk about. We could go on and on. Is there any closing information or comments you'd like to make for our listeners?
You can check out my kind of my hub is my last name. It's TAHQUECHI.com. So that's kind of like the hub of everything. So if you want to know more about me, want to know more about any of the bodies of work, check that out. You can also drop me a message on social medias, just about everything at Nedskee, Nedskee. It's kind of a funky old nickname that I've had for a long time. So, feel free to drop me a message, and if you have questions or anything that I can help with. So, or if you're interested in showing our work,
Great. And you can always send questions or suggestions for Ted's trip this summer to us as well. And we'll be sure to pass those along. Our phone number. Yeah. Our phone number again is 720-712-8856 or feedback@aftersight.org. Ted, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For joining us. It was a very informative conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the tactile photos later this year, and we'll probably see you at the Shine Festival as well.
Yay!
Just for all of our listeners, I just want to let you know that Blind Level Tech will be getting a new co-host. So listen tomorrow for that announcement of who that co-host will be. And we'll also be launching Game Changers on June 6th that will focus on accessible sports. And you can listen to all of our podcasts online on our website, on Spotify, and all of the platforms that you typically use to listen to your podcasts. And we hope that this program today, I'm sure it has, helped you navigate your life with vision loss.